Hello chess lovers, Suren here with another insane game. With the white piece is playing Bulgarian chess grandmaster Veselin Topalov and his opponent is Russian chess grandmaster Vladimir Kramnik. The game was played in 1999 in Linares. Let's see what happened on the board. Topalov opened up with e4 and e5 by Kramnik, knight f3, knight f6, with the Petrov's defense, knight takes e5, d6. Here usually white is moving back his knight on f3. This is the main move, but instead of retreating, Topalov moved forward his knight and sacrificed on f7. Look at this, guys. We have this speculative but entertaining Cochrane Gambit, which is named after Scottish chess master and lawyer John Cochrane. Though this line is considered to be dubious, Bronstein claimed that the Cochrane Gambit was no weaker than the alternatives, because white with his two mobile pawns has a long-lasting initiative in the center. Black accepted the sacrifice, and in just 4 moves Kramnik already has an extra piece. But Topalov has a psychological advantage. While Kramnik would start finding moves over the board, Topalov had prepared this line carefully. As you can see, against the piece, white got 2 pawns, and actually white's compensation lies in the unhappy position of black's king. Black still needs to spend time to evacuate his precious king from the center, but it is not an easy task. On the other hand, white has an extra central pawn on e4, which allows him to build a strong pawn roller with d2 to d4 and f2 to f4. Here we have knight c3, although this is not the most popular move. Usually instead of playing knight c3, white is instantly establishing this classical pawn center by going for d2 to d4, but in our game we have knight c3, which was definitely Topalov's preparation. And as white didn't go for d2 to d4, Kramnik played c5 to counter-control this d4 square. Now comes bishop c4 check. White is developing his light squared bishop with a tempo, and bishop e6. By offering the exchange of light squared bishops, black is eliminating white's powerful bishop, and we have it, the exchange of light squared bishops on e6. Look at this black king on e6 square, guys. This is move 7, and at such a high level we can see black king on e6 on move 7. Here comes d4, as black king is in the middle of the board. White wants to open up the center and target it, and king f7 instead of going for c takes d4. Kramnik is looking for a safe shelter for his king. Meanwhile we have d takes c5. While black can't recapture, the pawn on d6 is pinned, knight c6 and queen e2, a very venomous move. White queen is both eyeballing on this c4 square, and at the same time this queen can support the pawn on e4. For example, if move like d takes c5, then e5 can be played, and the question arises, what is black going to do with his knight? If knight d8, then queen c4 check, and black is in trouble. That's why after queen e2 we have queen d7. Black wants to meet queen c4 check with queen e6. Now comes bishop e3. Topalov is not even paying attention to the pawn on d6. He wants a rapid development of his pieces. He's preparing castling queenside, and finally Kramnik recaptured. Now comes f4, and now we have a very typical position in Cochrane Gambit, where these e and f pawns are starting to march forward. Rook e8, e5, knight g4, rook d1, queen f5, and we have castling kingside h5. A nice move by Topalov. He's fixing white's pawns, and also at some point this h7 square can be a nice shelter for black king. And as black didn't capture on e3, Topalov is moving it back on c1, thus keeping it alive. But now we have knight d4. This time Kramnik's second knight is finding an outpost, and queen c4 check. King g6, of course not queen e6, because white can play queen d3 with the threat of f5, and if queen f5 then knight e4 is coming, and then white will play c3 followed by knight g5. Yes, this can be very unpleasant for black. That's why in our game after queen c4 check we have king g6. Now comes h3. As both black knights are on very active squares, Topalov is starting to harass them. Knight h6, this time we have knight b5 and a6, which is not a good move. Instead of playing a6, it was better to capture on c2 with the knight. By the way, you can't capture on c2 with the queen because of the simple rook takes d4. And actually after knight takes c2, white has no compensation. If rook d3, then knight d4. If knight takes d4, then c takes d4. And if rook g3 check, then king h7. Black is managing to defend successfully. If queen takes d4, then b6. And then bishop c5 is coming. Black can quickly consolidate his position and white can face serious problems. But in our game after knight b5 we have a6. Here comes knight takes d4, c takes d4, queen takes d4 and rook c8. Although queen takes c2 is also playable. If queen b6 check, then king h7. But in our game we have rook c8. Now comes queen b6 check, king h7. Queen takes b7 and in return we have rook takes c2. Now you can't capture on a6 because black can announce a check from c5 and then play queen e4. That's why here Topalov played bishop e3, preventing any unpleasant checks, but now we have queen g6. All the time Kramnik is creating problems for white, but at the same time still there are a lot of problems in black's camp. How is Kramnik going to solve the development of this bishop which can free the rook? Here we have rook c1, after which we have the exchange of rooks on c1, knight f5, bishop f2, h4, rook c7. Topalov is still managing to keep black pieces demoralized. Knight g3, king h2, knight f1 check, king g1, queen b1 and bishop takes h4. And in here Kramnik made a very beautiful move, played bishop c5 check and the players agreed to a draw. The idea is that now if rook takes c5, then black can announce a discovered check and you can't play king f2 because of this knight e4 fork. That's why after knight g3, as your rook is already on c5, you should play king h2. And in here, black can simply give a perpetual check and end up the game in a draw. That's why in view of these lines, after bishop c5 check, the players agreed to a draw. A very interesting game, I think, and I would like to call this a fighting draw. Topalov's opening choice was simply insane. Let's admit that it's a very rare scene to see Cochrane Gambit at such a high level. And on the other hand, in the end, it was Kramnik who sacrificed his bishop, and the game started with a bishop sacrifice and ended up with a bishop sacrifice, and we have a fighting draw. In the end, as usual, would like to ask you to solve a chess puzzle. Please pause the video and try to find the winning line for black. I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. If you liked this game, give the thumbs up. For more games, consider subscribing to my channel. Also, press the bell button to get notified about new uploads. I will see you in my next video. Take care.